Welcome all to this session of Tech Talk. Today, we're going to be talking about connecting your favorite DB tools to your cloud database services. My name is Eddie Ambler, and
And I'm Leo Alvarado.
all right. So with that, let's get started. So today's agenda is full of really cool things that anyone who's new to the cloud environment, or just has had questions on how do I connect my tools. I'm used to using all my tools on premise. Well, in this session, we're going to talk about how uh, can you connect your on-premise DB tools like Sql Developer to cloud database instances that are in a secure private subnet. We'll not only talk about it, but we'll demo it as well. So we'll walk you through the prerequisite steps that need to happen. How do you find your IPs? How do you find your connect strings? We'll discuss also, how do you use the console to set up your environment to allow cloud DB tools, right? To be able to connect to databases that are in a private subnet. So cloud DB tools are tools that are hosted in the Oracle tenancy that you can use to connect to the database. So we'll walk you through that. And we'll also demo it so that you can walk away understanding exactly how you can set up your environment to be able to use your on-premise and cloud tools. So as part of that, we'll need to start off the conversation by just reiterating to folks, what a VCN is, what a private subnet is, what a public subnet is, just a real high level network conversation just to kind of get the juices flowing. And with that, let's kind of jump into, again, what you should learn, right? The learning points of this, you should be able to find your database connect string, be able to identify your database host IP details. You should know how to securely save and use database connection details, right? And using the Cloud Vault. So, no more putting passwords in plain text for people to steal. We'll show you how to do it securely using the OCI Cloud Vault. We'll show you how to configure and use Cloud Database Tools connections feature, right? Which is a great way to go ahead and pre-configure your connections and have them available for your cloud tools to be able to use on demand without constantly needing to type in the passwords. And we'll show you how to use the SQL Cloud SQL worksheet feature, to natively use those tools and execute that. And like we said in the beginning, we'll show you how to enable connectivity from your desktop to the private cloud subnets where most databases live, right? Every once in a while, you might put a database in a public subnet for ease of access via direct internet access, but typically most of the databases are going to be deployed in private subnets. So, let's start this conversation by, first of all, just going over really quickly what the database service offerings are. So as you can see, Oracle has a portfolio of databases that span from supporting small to mid-sized workloads with our base database service that comes in Enterprise and Standard Edition, right? It's the most affordable unit that we offer. It can support very small workloads and extend from single instance to 2 instance rack nodes. And then, for those who need a little bit more power, a little bit more scale, we have our Exadata family of cloud services. So we have Exadata database service on the public cloud, and we have it also in Cloud at Customer. So if you have restrictions and you need to have your data behind your firewall, this is a perfect use case for our Cloud at Customer series, where you can have the power and the automation of the cloud behind your firewall. But for those of us who really need even more, you want more of a managed service, even more automation, Oracle provides this fully automated, fully managed, autonomous database that can be run in the public cloud or on Cloud at Customer as well. So again, that's just a really quick rundown of the services that we have at the database tier. So let's check out how we can, connect our tools to some of these things. So, like I said, we'd start with a conversation on just a refresher on some terms and what it is. So you'll hear the term VCN, Virtual Cloud Network, and that is the Oracle terminology for the network that will host your tenancy in the cloud. So within that network that you provision, there are probably going to be several subnets. You'll probably see a subnet that is created for your application tier. You'll probably see a subnet that is created for your database tier. You'll probably see a subnet that's created for your web servers. And then there's a conversation that will be had as to which tiers should be public and which tiers should be private. And typically, the most organizations will have their web tier on a public subnet, and the rest of the tiers below that are protected in secure private subnets. So as you see depicted here on the screen, starting at the top left, the customer has their on-premise equipment and they can connect to their cloud tenancies either via secure IP sec VPN, or they can buy a fast connect connection that can give them dedicated bandwidth, right? They can get bandwidth anywhere from 1 gig, 10 gig, all the way to 100 gig of dedicated bandwidth, whereas the IPsec VPN is going to be best effort public internet bandwidth. As we move down a little bit, you see that on-premise applications can connect to the cloud, or we've got our on-premise tools, which is what we're here to talk about. I kind of called out one in particular, but as you can imagine, there's probably many that we could have chosen. So your SQL Developer tools, they're able to go from the on-premise network via SSH tunnel, transmitting their SQLnet traffic to a Bastion server. A Bastion server is a unique instance of a compute deployment that has a very low surface of attack with a minimalistic install base to make it a secure gateway to allow connectivity from authorized access points to sessions that go from the Bastion to the private subnet where your data lives in your tenancy.
So, Eddie, looking at this diagram, what are the other tools that we can use to connect to the database? So here we're just showing SQL Developer, but are there any other tools that we can use from our on-premise?
Absolutely. As long as your tool has got except SQLnet traffic, right? It doesn't care if it's Toad, BMC Patrol, whatever your favorite tool that you're used to using today. All right. The same way you would connect with your tool on premise, the Bastion session, as you'll see, will allow you to take the details of your required to establish your connect session and allow that to be used. So that's a great thing. So you can use the cloud and continue to be highly efficient with the tools that you're used to developing with. So no need to learn new tools, no need to buy new tools. You can connect your best and favorite tools directly to the Oracle database, just as if they were on premise.
Great to hear that.
Thank you. Now, to follow on to your question, if you look on the bottom right of the diagram, you'll notice there's a database tools and OCI console. So there are actually, as part of the cloud tenancy, there are some native cloud-based database tools that you can use. SQL Worksheet is one of those tools. And what it does is you have to give it permission via endpoint to be able to provide a network path from the Oracle session location into your VCN. That way you're creating a secure and private connection to your database. And you'll be able to, from within the cloud, use the cloud tools to connect to your databases as well. And if this sounds a little difficult, don't worry. We're going to walk you through what it takes to set up the one-time tasks and actually how to launch these things so that when you try it on your own, it'll be easy peasy. Any other questions right now? I think we covered the basics in good order. All right.
Well, there's another question here. Like, are these database tools that you mentioned below, are these are built in already in OCI console, right?
That's right. These are native tools that are part of the service, ready for you to use whenever you're ready. So it's great for you to be able to take advantage of them. For the assumption maybe you don't have tools on your desktop,
Mhm.
or you're setting up a developer environment in the cloud, right? So you want your entire suite of tools to be from the cloud. This is a great way to do that. You can leverage these tools here as well that way.
Great.
Well, let's start to get ready for the really interesting stuff. So, we talked about needing to create a bastion in order to connect connect our SQL Developer on-premise tool to our database, which happens to live on a private subnet in our cloud tenancy. So what would we need? Well, we'd need to know the name of the VCN. We'd need to know the name of the subnet that resource is created in. We need to know the private IP of the host that is servicing the cloud database instance. And as you would guess, we'd need to know the connect string, service name portion of the connect string to that pluggable database. And the very last bullet talks about IPv4 addresses. These are the addresses that you plan to connect to. So not only are you able to open the pipeline, but you are able to do it in a secure fashion where you can dictate exactly what IP or ranges of IPs can actually connect to your bastion and have access. So you have a very secure way to be able to establish that connectivity and limit exactly who and from where can make that connection. So, our first demo is, hey, let's log into the OCI console. Let's look at what it takes to configure a Bastion and create a Bastion session. Let me change my screens real quick. All right, Leo, can you still see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome, awesome. All right, so I have logged into the Oracle Cloud Console, and you'll hear me say Open Navigation Menu. And you see these three lines on the left side. Some people call it a hamburger menu, but we'll click on that there, and we'll go over to our Bastion. And what you'll notice is that we are in a compartment. If you look on the left side of the screen under list scopes, called My Demo. So we've organized all of our cloud resources that we're going to use into a nice secure compartment that we can create all these demos for you to look at. And when you look at our online how-to demos, you'll see us reference these compartments and similar names. So to create a Bastion, we would click on Create Bastion, which is really easy. You give your Bastion name, you select the VCN that you will be talking to. In our case, we will be using the My Demo VCN. We select a subnet. Our database is on a private subnet called My Demo VCN. And then you give the list of IP addresses that you want to allow to connect to your Bastion via SSH. So I have pre-created this Bastion, so I won't hit the create button here. But you see here that if you'd hit create, you would get your Bastion would show up here. It would have a name. It would have a state. That state would start out as creating. and then turned green as active once the Bastion was ready for utilization. So let's click on our Bastion. So now that we have our Bastion, we need to create the other half, which is a Bastion session. So similar, in the session section of the page, we will click on Create Session. This brings up the Create Session dialog, which we then would say SSH port forwarding session, because we want to bring our session back to our on-premise desktop. We give our session a name, and we specify an IP address. And you're probably going, hey, how do I get that IP address? I will show you how to get the IP address of your target host just after this demo. For the port, you would specify 1521 for your database port. If you're using Autonomous as your target, you'd be 1522. And if you've changed the default database listener port to some other port, that's the port that you'll use here. And ultimately, you have to have an SSH key pair to be able to validate who you are and create a secure connection. So you're given 3 choices here. For us, we already have an SSH key pair created. So we would do choose SSH key file, click on our browser, drop the file in, and click on Create Session. I've created that session for us, as you can see here in this first row. I named it Bastion My19C PDB. Notice it has port forwarding, like we said. It has a target resource IP of here, which I'll show you how we found that. It has the port that we specified, a state of active, and it has a session TTL of 3 hours. So when you're creating your Bastion, you can have a rule that says that your time to live on your Bastion is anywhere between 30 minutes and 3 hours. Whatever you choose for the Bastion, that is the maximum amount of time your session can have. So if you say your Bastion can be 2 hours, well, you cannot have a session that goes to 3 hours. But at the session level, you can further restrict the time to live if you want the sessions to only have 30 minutes, even though the Bastion might be at 3 hours. You're able to define that as well. So before we go too far, right, let's take a look at our database that we're going to try to connect to. So I would come into my cloud environment, click on my menu, right? I will click on Oracle Database. And then I know that the database I'm trying to connect to is a Oracle-based database, right? VM. So I click on here. Again, like we did earlier for the Bastion, on the left side, you see my scope is still my demo for my compartment. I click on the my demo DB system link. This brings up the DB systems details that lets me understand, hey, what is the VCN? So if you look on the right side under network, you'll notice that the VCN, right, this area right here, says my demo VCN. And then you'll notice that the client subnet says private subnet, my demo VCN. So now we know the information that we need for a Bastion at the VCN level and the subnet layer level, and we know the port that the database is on. Okay, so we have all those details, but we're missing the private IP. So if you scroll down and under resources and click on nodes, what will happen is the nodes section will show up, and the IP, that private IP that we saw, right, that we needed to enter as our target for our Bastion session is provided. So now we have almost all the information we need to make our connection.
Eddie, there's a question in the chat, like how do I find the connection string for my database, like service name and host name IPs?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that question. Absolutely, right? So we would have had a session, but no connect string. So under resources, if you click on databases, what will happen is it will bring up the database that's associated with the DB system that I'm in. As you can see, I can tell the state, I can tell the database unique name, I can tell that this database is actually configured as a transaction processing database for the workload type. I can see its patch version. So let's click on the database name, which will actually bring me to the database details page for the container database. So we note at the top that our container database is named My19CPDB. If I wanted to connect here, I simply click on DB Connections tab. This brings up the connect strings, gives me two formats. I have the easy connect string that I can use, and I have the long connect string that I can use. The part of the connect string that we're going to care about for using with our SQL Developer or our Toad is this service name component right here, right? So we would copy that into our buffer for use when we actually connect our SQL Developer or Toad tool. Now, but we were trying to connect to the pluggable database. So this is a multi-tenant database, right? So container databases can contain one or many pluggable databases. So under resources on the left, we would click on pluggable databases. Okay, this brings up the list of available pluggable databases. For us, we click on My19CPDB, which is our pluggable database name. And you'll notice it looks a lot like the container database page. Again, you click on the PDB connection tab, and that will give you your connect strings. You hit the show button to expand the connect string, and you would copy the string, the service name portion of the connect string. All right, so now that we have the service name portion of our connect string, and we've got our VCN name, our subnet name, and our private IP, we have all the details that were required to make our connection. So at this point, let's do the fun stuff. Let's actually go and bring up SQL Developer so that we can make our database connection. All right, so once you launch your SQL Developer, you are able to hit the new connection icon, which will bring up the screen. You can put in your. Actually, let me back up. There's one step I forgot to show you. I'll be right back to it. So now that we have all our details, we'll go over to our Bastion. Again, we were in our demo Bastion and we had our session. So our session got created, but we needed to actually establish the tunnel. So at the end of the row, there's these three dots that are called the action items. So you would click on the action items and you get some options. So you would copy the SSH command. Okay, so when you copy that SSH command, you take that SSH command, put it in your buffer, and then you would go to your notepad, and you would actually input the path to your SSH key file. Make sure that you put in the database port for the local port, and then run that SSH command in your terminal. So that is actually the last mile that will connect your terminal to this Bastion session. Okay, so don't forget that step like I almost did here. Again, after you create your session, click the Actions tab, copy the SSH command, put it in your favorite editor, input the path to your SSH key file, update the port to reflect your database port, run it in your terminal, and then you're ready to go. So now that we've got that step out of the way, let's switch back over to our SQL Developer. So we've launched our new connection window on our SQL Developer. We're ready to connect. So for the name, we're going to enter my19c PDB, right? We're going to make sure that our database type is Oracle. And for the user info, we're going to use the username as sys. We're going to pick a role, the appropriate role. For us, it's sysdba. We will enter the sys password into the password field. And now this is in the details section under here. For the host name, it's localhost. And the reason we're using localhost is because remember, we just created a tunnel from our localhost to the Bastion server. So you'll put localhost, you'll put in the port of our database again, 1521. And for the service name, we will paste that service name that we got out of the database connect string. So you could tell by the name, it's my19c PDB versus CDB, right here, right in the beginning part. And that's because we wanted to connect to the pluggable database, right? So make sure that you paste the appropriate service string so that you connect to the right tier within your multi-tenancy. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to test our connection. All right, so now we can go ahead and actually connect. All right, so we are now connected to our my19c PDB. We can actually see the tables and browse. So this is, at this point, you are free to operate just as you would at any point in time. So let's see. I think now that we probably would want to go and look at, we've connected an on-premise tool, right? And this would be the same as if it were Toad or anything. But now we want to probably look at what does it take to use the cloud tools. But before I do that, any questions? We're good to go here. All right, awesome. Let me get this out of the way. Bring back up our All right, so we're done with this task here. We configured our Bastion. We looked at creating a Bastion session. We even had a bonus in which the Bastion session had timed out, and we talked about how easy it was to literally use the same SSH command that was still active to just run it again in our terminal. And we fired up our SQL Developer. And we were able to input the information into our SQL Developer and connect to our SQL Developer, at which point you could use it just as if the database were directly on premise with you. So nothing different about how you use your tool. So there you go, nice and easy. Okay, so we did the demo already to actually show you this in real time. So that was done, which brings us to this slide, which is, how do you connect your cloud database using Cloud DB tools, so the native tools? So before, you were connecting from your tools in your data center to the cloud. In this instance, you're going to be using database tools in OCI console via a secure and private connection to this element called an endpoint that goes into your subnet in your VCN that gives access to databases on that subnet or to a very specific IP in that subnet. So you can be very granular in not only who can get to you, but what they can get to as well. So cloud database tools in OCI console, they use the concept of a private endpoint when the network access to the database is restricted from general connections, right? It requires a secure path. So by virtue of being in a private subnet, those connections would qualify. So what are we going to do for task 3? So we're going to, use the OCI console because I want you guys to to get exposure to what the OCI console looks like and how you navigate. And so we'll look at, hey, what does it take to do a vault, to create the master encryption key, to create a secret, to create a private endpoint, and ultimately to create a connection that I can use with these tools. So, steps 1 and 2 are one-time only tasks. I'm showing you them here in case you don't have one in your tenancy yet. Then you'll at least know it's an easy thing to do and not be afraid to go try it. So with that being said, let's go on the journey. All right, when we're done with the journey, we'll actually use one of the CloudDB tools, SQL Worksheet, to connect to that cloud database, which happens to be on a private subnet with a private IP. To make it easy, we'll use the same database that we connected to with Sql Developer. That way you see it doesn't really matter whether you're going from outside of the cloud or within the cloud. All right, so let's bring back up our console. Okay, so we have got our console up, and the first thing that we want to do is go and work on our vault. All right, so again, in the hamburger menu is how we navigate. So we could come down to identity and security. On the right side, you see our vault. Right, last time we visited the Bastion. This time we're going to visit the vault. So, our demo, our compartment is set to my demo underneath list scopes. So just kind of showing you, getting you used to, I always check which compartment I'm in because you might not have permission in other compartments, right? So compartments give you the ability to provide access boundaries for who should be able to use things. You'll notice that we have a vault created, but if we didn't and we hit create vault, creating a vault's real simple. Hey, what compartment do you want to create the vault in? We give it, and we say, hey, my demo, we give it a name. We have a choice to say, do we need this vault to be private or not? For our demo, we said no. There are some advanced options here to apply tagging. You'll notice that all our resources will be able to apply tags. Tags are one of those things that you can apply after the resources provision. So for our demos, we usually just skip those, click on Create Vault, and what will happen is your vault will show up here. The state will start out as creating, and after a little bit, it will turn to active. Once your vault is active, you're ready to click on its name. And the first thing a vault will need is a master encryption key. So again, we've created one for the demo for expediency so that we can kind of keep moving along, but you'll see the process is the same. We'll click create key, make sure that we'll define which compartment we want our key to be in. We'll choose what kind of protection mode, whether we want hardware or software. For our protection mode, we'll give our key a name. We will choose what kind of key shape we want, and we'll pick the length of the key shape. So the bigger the key shape length, the more secure it is. So and the values that you get in the length field will vary depending on the key type. So if we picked RSA, notice that we get different values that we can pick for the key shape length. For our demo, we actually picked an asymmetric key so that we could be able to do signing and data encryption and unencryption, which is something we couldn't do with the asymmetric keys. Again, so then we would click on create. Well, actually there's same set of options here. We can apply tags. So we would click on create. What would happen, we would get a row in here. The state will start out as creating, end up as enabled once it's ready. Protection mode we chose was HSM. The algorithm was an AES key. So once your master key is enabled, you can simply then go to the next step, which is to create a secret. Now, remember, a secret is the thing that will hold things like your passwords, security tokens, and things like that. Your secrets are going to be encrypted with the master encryption key that we just created. So we would click on Create Secret. Okay, you only need one master encryption key, but you can create many, many, many secrets, right? For all of your databases or for different users in your databases. Again, define the compartment where your secret will be stored. Give your secret a name that helps you to identify it so that when you see the name, you know what it's for. Give yourself a description, but try not to put any information that just shouldn't be visible in the dashboard. You will pick your encryption key that you want to encrypt that secret with. For us, we'll use the master encryption key that we created, right? Then you have a choice of the secret type template, whether you want to input your secret in the console in plain text or import it maybe in base 64. But whether you import it as plain text or base 64, the console will automatically convert your secret, which is nothing more than your password. It'll convert it into base 64 before it loads it into the vaults. Okay, so just thought I'd show you that. Now, under the advanced options here, there are rules, and the secret rules governs the use and management of the secrets. There are two rule types. There is the secret reuse rule, which basically says, if I set this rule, my secret versions cannot be reused. Then I can have my expiry secret rules, which says, hey, my secrets versions can last for 1 to 90 days, and my secret can actually be given a very exact date and time that it will expire on. So for our demos, I don't actually define any of those rules, but so you have full control as to how long these secrets are around and how often the secrets have to rotate, and so you can have good governance on your passwords as well. We hit create secret, and what would happen is you would get a secret. So for us, we created my demo secret. So this secret is holding the password for our target database. So I no longer have to type that password in. It is now stored here for our use. So the next thing that we would do is we need to create a private endpoint. So let's go over to Developer Services and under Database Tools, right? Just before we can use our connections in our SQL worksheet, we need to be able to allow our cloud tools permission. So this is where we get these private endpoints, right? So we come to the private endpoint, and remember, we can have many connections to the databases, right? And to many databases. So you would have endpoints, unique endpoints for all the databases that you want to create. So we would click on Create Private Endpoint. Very easy again. Give it a name, give it a compartment, select the database type, the radial button. Now you will pick what kind of database you're trying to create a private endpoint for. Is it an autonomous database? Is it an Oracle database? Or is it an Exadata database in the public cloud? For us, it's an Oracle database. This preloads the DB systems from our compartment for us to choose from, right? If we had multiple, we would click on the dropdown, and those would be there for us to select. The subnet, again, we get to choose from the subnets that are available in our compartment. Our database is on this private subnet. And how did we know? Remember when we went to the DB system, we saw the VCN and we saw the subnet details. The subnet details said it was on private. So we pick that and we hit create. So since we've pre-created ours, we gave it a name of my private EP. Okay, so you can name it anything you want. I'm just trying to using a nice, easy name to kind of find. So now when you first create it, the status will be creating. And we can see here that our status for our private endpoint is active. So now we're almost to the end. We need to define our connection, which will tie it all together, right? So under database tools, we actually click on connections and we would create connection. Notice none of these things take a lot. You give your connection name, you define the compartment that it's in, and similar to the last process, so use the select database radial button, choose what kind of database it is that we're trying to connect for. Notice it will pull in the DB system name, the database homes. It will pull in all the available container databases that are there for that DB system. So then if you want to connect to the container, you stop here. For us, we want to connect to the pluggable database, just like we did with Sql Developer. So we would choose the My19C PDB, which is our pluggable database name, and we will define our username, right? So we would put in sys here, just like if we were in Sql Developer, take the sysdba role. Now, we're not going to type the password here. Remember, we created a secret. So we would go here and we could say, okay, I have a secret. We called my demo secret, and we were in our my demo vault, right? So we pick that. This will produce and pre-populate the connect string and expose the checkbox that says access via private network. One more field. Okay. All right, so then the very last field that we would fill in is the private endpoint, which in our case, we made it my private EP, right? So we pick our endpoint name and click on next. So since we have our session pre-created, we created our session that we called my demo 19C PDB sys. Why? Well, we're connecting to the my demo compartment. The database name we're using is the 19C PDB, and we're connecting as a sys user. All right, so we will click on that connection. Now, the first time you come into your connection, you would want to do validate, because remember earlier we had in Sql Developer, we had something timeout. You never know if there's something wrong in the configuration or something has changed in the security rules. So we would click on validate to make sure that our connection is actually good. We get the success, validated connection to the database. It confirms which database it connected to by giving you that host string, and it gives you some details about that database that you are connecting to. So now, guess what? We get to launch the SQL worksheet, which is the database embedded tool. So it's just it shows up on the connections details page. You simply click on connections, and there you go. You are now connected to your pluggable database, just as if you had connected via SQL Developer or Toad or one of those other tools. So a couple of quick things here is you'll have access to load items that are stored in object storage or that are on your local drive, okay? So, and same thing, when you're done with your work, you have your scripts, you have your outputs, you want to save them, you can save it to object storage, or you can save it to the local drive. Here on the far right, you'll see a list of connections. As many connections as you connect, as you have, you can instantly change between your connections. So you don't have to go relaunch SQL Worksheet. You simply come here, click on another connection, and instantly you'll be connected to that database. If you're here and you got a new database, you want to create a new connection, no problem. You can launch the Create Connection wizard from here as well. And as you would expect, you can type commands directly in the SQL worksheet in the SQL area, click on Run, and it will return to you the output in the results section of the screen. I think that's it for the demo. Let me go back to our PowerPoint and see what else there is. I don't think there's anything else here, but all right. So we were on task 4. And we used the Cloud DB tools to create SQL worksheets to connect the cloud databases on a private subnet. So, we took 2 scenarios, right? We've got a secure cloud database, which we were able to create in a matter of a few clicks. We were able to connect our on-premise database tools to that database that was in the private subnet by creating the tunnel to the Bastion server and being able to use those sessions. Then we took the other approach and said, what if we want to use cloud database tools? So we logged on to our tenancy and navigated to our vault, created a secret for our database, created a connection for our database. Then we launched our SQL worksheet, and we're able to work just as if it were local. So I guess at this point, I'll ask if there are any questions that we haven't answered, or any other things that in the future, you think we should talk about and present to the team. Well, I hope that you guys found this session informative, and I look forward to engaging with you guys on our next Tech Talk. But before we depart, let's get you connected on a couple things. Leo, if you want to take them through the resources and how to join our group, that would be great.
Sure, Eddie. So for other resources, so we're building this get started guides. So these are collections of how-to demos for all the cloud database services, from base database service, Exadata database service, both on dedicated infrastructure and on cloud at customer. We also have our public Slack workspace, in which we are updating all of these resources such as get started guides. We also updating the Slack workspace with the upcoming Tech Talk series. We're also sending their featured blogs, and yeah, we are also engaging to everyone in terms of discussion and forums. And then for other collaterals, so you can also visit the www.oracle.com/database and www.oracle.com/Exadata. So for the Slack workspace, so we will also be putting it in the chat, the link to join. So we're asking everyone if you want to join the discussion. So this is everything about cloud database services. So here's the join link for you to join, and then the steps on the next slide. Okay, so how to join? So just click on the join link, and then it will ask you to log in your email account on Slack. Then it will ask you to set up your 2FA code, and then that's it. So welcome to our workspace. So we're happy to see you all there in our Slack workspace.
Well, thank you, Leo. Well, this brings this session of Tech Talk with Leo and Eddie to an end. Until our next session, stay safe and be prosperous. I'm Eddie.
And I'm Leo.
Thank you very much.